Thank you very much for joining us for today's Lunch and Learn session in partnership with the NHS. So for those of you who haven't met me previously on any of these calls, my name's Suzanne Stanbrook. I'm a police officer. I work for the East Basic Command Unit, which covers Havering, Barking Dagenham and Redbridge. In addition to that, my role is a hate crime coordinator. And so I deal with all things hate crime related, which is what I want to speak to you about today. In my sort of voluntary part of my role, I'm also an LGBT+ advisor, which means I do engagements with the LGBT+ community outside of my normal role. And I also take on any hate crime against officers under our Hampshire flag as well. So that's just a little bit about me, what brings me here today to talk about hate crime. And really to answer any questions that anybody might have. I'm happy to raise them. And even if there's sort of general questions that you wish to raise, sometimes it's nice to have a police officer to speak to, and I'm happy to help. So please fire away. So the reason for putting on a hate crime talk during LGBT History Month was because there's a real lack of reporting when it comes to LGBT+ hate crime. I look at our monthly figures of hate crime, and it's roughly about 100 hate crimes that are recorded per month across Havering, Barking Dagenham and Redbridge. And of those, it's possibly only 2, maybe 3 that are reporting homophobic hate crime, transphobic hate crime, and I think it's not really reflective of the issues that our LGBT+ community are actually facing at the moment. So part of this is really to kind of encourage people to report something. I know, having spoken to members of the LGBT+ community during my role, they are very much of the opinion that oh, it's okay, you know, it was just a name calling, you know, nothing's going to happen. It's, you know, it's a waste of police time. I think that's really what I want to do, is to put people's mind at ease that hate crime is yes, it is a broad spectrum of different characteristics: race, faith, disability, gender identity and sexual orientation. Obviously the latter 2 are the ones that obviously I want to concentrate on today, but unless we hear about the issues that are happening within the LGBT+ community, then it makes it very difficult for us to address them and to, you know, break down barriers. And also part of my job is to you know, get that acceptance of people's different ways in which they live their lives. You know, there is still a stigma within faith groups and you know, the LGBT+ community, because it conflicts sometimes with, you know, the practices that they follow. For example, being a Muslim and LGBT+ you know, identifier, it still makes it very difficult for those people to live within their family households. They're very isolated. They're then forced into some very difficult marriages because they don't accept them for who they are. And that's part of my role, really, is to try and educate people as much as possible that, you know, hate crime goes just beyond the name calling. And the more that we can hear about it, and the more that we can encourage people to come to the police, to speak about their issues, to speak about what the difficulties are that they're facing, then just the more we can, you know, put things together and really drive forward the changes that we want to make. So report to hate crime to the police. So, for example, just to give you an idea of the difference in, you know, it being a characteristic of hate crime. If I'm out, if people can remember that, being out on the street and going to the pub with their friends, if you meet up with a group and they've had a little bit too much to drink and they start being abusive on the in the street after they've had, you know, too many beers, But they're just swearing. They're just, just generally being abusive. Don't mention anything about any of the hate crime characteristics. So, don't make homophobic comments. They don't make transphobic comments. That would be a simple public order offence that can be dealt with by way of penalty notices, arrest, depending on the severity of it. So there's different options to deal with it. Excuse me. With hate crime, because the government and the police as a whole, not just within the Metropolitan Police, but within the country, this is being driven, right across England and Wales. Because of the severity of the hate crime, we're more interested in actually arresting that person and taking them to court, and then potentially they will then get a stiffer sentence because they have made a homophobic or a transphobic comment towards people. With that approach, that more robust approach does mean that if you go to court, it will get you a better result. A fine, it could be a prison sentence, depending on the severity of the incident that sort of set off the trial in the first place. And it can add up to 6 months more of prison time. It can lead to more heavier fines. However, at the moment, that does involve the victim giving us a statement. It does involve the victim having to attend court. It's that name calling might seem like a small incident to say an officer, but actually that sort of deep impact that's had on that person and the way that they now go about their lives can be really serious. And not everybody wants to then go to court and have to relive that, especially when there's such a gap. So currently, as part of my role, we are looking at alternative solutions to dealing with hate crime. We have community resolutions. If it's a neighbour dispute, is it because of a lack of understanding about being LGBT? Is a lack of education around what it means to be part of the LGBT plus community, and that's why really we want to hear about what people may consider to be very small incidences, whether it be a name calling out of a car during a road rage incident. However small it is, it doesn't make it right, and I think that's the most important message. A small incident can lead to much wider problems moving forward. If somebody is constantly being called a name, it's harmful. They say sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. Well, actually, my argument is that I can deal with someone's broken bones and I can take them to the hospital and they will mend, but the wounds of words, which can really scar very deeply, especially when they're commenting about the fact that you are LGBTQ member of the community, I think can sometimes be more damaging. I'm certainly not saying that if you're assaulted because you're part of the LGBT plus community and quite seriously that's not I don't take that seriously, but I think sometimes we don't put enough emphasis on how words can be some of the worst weapons that people use, because they do stick with us. We do relive it, and when people are constantly saying that and we are constantly hearing that word, it's damaging. It's damaging to our mental health. It doesn't make us feel like the person that we want to be. And that's really part of the barrier that we need to break down. My goal, that's the reason I joined as a police officer, however cliche it may sound, it's because I want to help people. I want the community to live together as one. I don't want there to be any barriers to anybody, whatever faith, race they are, if they're transgender, if they're non-binary, if they're lesbian, gay, disabled. And also we need to reflect on the fact that you know, there will be that intersectionality there as well around, you know, if you're disabled and part of the LGBT plus community, you know, that can be even more damaging, because perhaps maybe the services that you access as part of that are limited because of your disability. You know, somebody who's deaf and part of the LGBT plus community may find it really difficult to access, you know, other services that can offer them help over the phone or on the internet, because obviously, unless they speak sign language, we can't help them. So there's lots and lots and lots of avenues that we are looking at to improve people's lives across the whole spectrum, and you know, hopefully that you know, I like to hope that one day I won't have to give this talk, and I won't have to you know, ask people to report hate crime, because it will no longer be part of our society. I'm probably going to be working on that for the next, you know, 18 years of my career until I retire. However, I will continue to do that. It will be part of, you know, my drive as a police officer to, you know, ensure that we can, society can live as one, and we can respect, you know, everybody for who they are, you know, regardless of you know, being part of the LGBT plus community. I think so. We earlier on in the week, so we've been putting these lunch and learn sessions on. During last week, we had the chap who sets up Romford Pride, and actually it was a really heartwarming story. Who he basically put together the Pride event in Havering after being homophobically abused in the street for wearing short shorts and a pink shirt in summer. And you know, however much you know, I want people to be able to wear whatever they want to wear. You know, I don't want people to be you know, targeted because they choose to dress differently, or they choose to express themselves through the way they dress. I think I'm often asked, well, how is it that you can understand such, you know, such complexities? You know, I'm not blind to the fact that you know, I'm white, heterosexual. You know, how would I know what hate crime is? So the way that I describe it as being able to experience that is as a police officer. I put on a yellow jacket when I go into London and police Extinction Rebellion, you know, whichever protest that's you know, running at the time, and I will be targeted because of the fact that I wear a yellow jacket. I'm being judged by the fact that I wear a yellow jacket. I'm being judged by my choice of career, and nobody sees the person behind that choice. No one sees that person behind that yellow jacket. You know, it automatically, you know, makes me apparently a faceless person. It makes me uncaring because I've chosen to become a police officer. But the option is, when I go home at the end of the day, I take my uniform off and I stop being a police officer and I stop being a yellow jacket. But people from the LGBT plus community can't turn off who they are, you know, and that's and we should be embracing who they are, not quashing it or you know, forcing them to be isolated. You know, we should be encouraging people like Stephen Freeman to put Pride events on so that they can actually showcase who they are and what they have to offer society. You know, there's as police officers, we always look forward to Pride. It's one event that actually police officers always look forward to. It's a nice event to police. It's friendly. It's not hostile. So you know, I think within the organisation, I think we've moved a long way as well. I'm not going to stand here and pretend that we have been perfect in our approach to some of the LGBT matters that have gone on in the past. But you know, the learning is there all the time. And we are, like I say, every day there's an awful lot of work going on at the moment to assist, as I say, victims of hate crime. Is there a different solution that we can give them so that they have an outcome if they're a victim of crime, which doesn't involve them having to go to court and having to relive that awful situation that they've had to go through. It might be that we can actually issue them a ticket soon in the future, or there could be a community resolution so that, you know, we can mediate between two parties if they live within the same block. You know, we'll help out as much as we can. We use our safer neighbourhood officers to assist us with that. If there's, you know, housing issues, you know, we can obviously let the housing team know in the council, and they will do their best to assist. Obviously, you know, it's not something we can promise, but it's an option available to us, because, as I say, you know, we don't want the LGBT plus community to, you know, feel that they can't be who they are, because, you know, they're part of that community. You know, I'm part of the policing community. That I chose to be part of that community. You know, and for me, that's how I want everybody to feel. You know, I want them to feel that they're part of the community, regardless of, you know, how they identify: non-binary, transgender, gay, lesbian, you know, intersexual, asexual. You know, I just it's about opening those doors, opening up those conversations, and breaking down those barriers. As I've just sort of touched on housing, if there is a particular repeat suspect who is repeatedly abusing people for being part of the LGBT plus community, and they are a tenant within their home, we will use that as evidence towards having them evicted from their home and having them removed from that. So, you know, I think it's a really strong message that we're trying to put out here at the moment, that we do have the ability to, you know, there's other sanctions that we can take that can take place. Should a conviction not be sought at court, if it gets to that part, we can also place criminal behaviour orders onto people as well. So a criminal behaviour order will mean that they will be given a set of rules, and they have to follow those rules. And one of those might be that they can't, you know, visit that shop if it's a shopkeeper who is constantly being abused because they're part of the LGBT plus community. It might be that they, you know, they have to attend a session once a week to speak about maybe anger issues that they have. So there's some really, really good conditions that we can put onto that. And we do, and if they are convicted, then we have the extra strength of our probation officers as well. So they will have to visit them. They will have to engage in work. They will have to address their issues and be more accepting of society. So, as I say, I think although that kind of simple statement may lead to what appears to be quite a big piece of work at the end, you know, taking people to court, it's something that we are trying to encourage, because actually the outcome at the end is a really good outcome, and it gives that victim satisfaction, because that's what we're here for. You know, we're here to make sure our victims feel like they've been listened to. We want them to feel like they've been treated correctly. We want to feel like they've got the outcome from that situation as best that they feel that they wanted it to be. I mean, often if it's a road rage incident, they might say, oh, you know, heat of the moment, it's okay. But actually, if you get the license plate number of that car, we do write to them. We write to them and say, you were a victim of, you were a suspect of in a road rage incident. Your license plate number has been noted, and actually, if they do commit that offence again within 6 months, there are sanctions we can put on that vehicle. So there's a lot and lots of other disposable options out there, which I wanted to make people aware of. So that little bit of name calling, please let us know. I want, you know, However much I'd really like to hope that we've only had 2 or 3 homophobic, transphobic incidences within 1 month across 3 London boroughs. I mean, I'd like it to be 0, obviously, but I still don't think it's a real true reflection of the issues that are being faced. And letters through the door. It doesn't have to be name calling. If it's letters pushed through your door, if it's letters left on your windscreen because of the way you park your car. And please remember that hate crime is the perception of the victim or anybody else from the outside. So if your car is the only person getting a note on it, and you are the only LGBT plus community member in that road, I think I would perceive that to be a hate crime. I think that you are being targeted. I think that it obviously needs to stop, and immediate action needs to be taken. So it might be very difficult to work out where that note's coming from. However, if that person was to move and to start again in another street, it would be very easy for us, perhaps maybe 6 months down the line, to identify who that person is. So I'm not saying that we can solve every crime. Unfortunately, we can't. And if it were that easy, we'd be even busier than we are now, arresting people. So, but yeah, so I think that was sort of what I wanted to kind of bring to the table today, about the different disposal options that we have within hate crime, how important it is that we hear about what's going on with the community so that we can solve the problems, we can break down the barriers. Everybody feels like they are equal in their rights, and everybody should be able to go out in the street and wear what they want, and not be called names regarding it, or be looked at or stared or pointed at. People shouldn't be afraid to go into their local restaurant or public house through fear of being almost ostracised because they are part of the LGBT plus community.